The sun fell heavy on the Arizona hillside. Thomas Merrick stood beside the smallest grave he'd ever dug. His hands were raw. Blisters wept where the shovel had bit deepest. But he felt nothing there. All the pain had moved inside to a place beneath his ribs where his daughter used to live. The coffin was pine. He'd built it himself 3 nights ago, working by lamplight, while the rest of the ranch slept. Each nail he drove felt like another betrayal. Lucy had been afraid of the dark. Now he was sealing her into an eternal night. Miguel stood 10 paces back. The foreman's weathered face carried its own grief. He'd taught Lucy to braid rope. She'd called him Tio Miguel, though no blood connected them. 6 vaqueros formed a silent line behind him. They'd removed their hats, heads bowed. These were men who knew how to honor the dead. Sean O'Halloran read from a worn Bible. The Irish cowboy's voice cracked on every 3rd word. He was drunk, probably, or trying not to be. Thomas couldn't tell anymore, couldn't bring himself to care. "Suffer the little children to come unto me," Sean read. His accent made the words sound like a song. "For of such is the kingdom of heaven." Thomas wanted to believe that, wanted to imagine Lucy somewhere bright and warm, laughing the way she used to laugh when he lifted her onto his shoulders. But belief was a luxury he'd lost somewhere between her first fever and her last breath. The memory came unbidden. Lucy in her bedskin gray as old paper, her hand in his, so small it disappeared inside his palm. "Papa, I'm cold." Those were her last words. Not goodbye, not I love you. Just a simple complaint about the temperature, as if he could fix it, as if he could fix anything. He'd piled blankets on her, stoked the fire until the room became an oven. But the cold she felt wasn't the kind that blankets could touch. It came from inside, from the disease eating her alive while he watched helpless as a man watching the sun set. She died at dawn. He'd known it was coming, had felt the change in her breathing during the night. The way each inhale became a question her body struggled to answer. Then the silence, louder than any scream. Miguel moved forward now, closed the coffin lid. The sound split the air like a whip crack. Thomas flinched. Every man there saw it. None mentioned it. They lowered her into the earth with ropes. Thomas had wanted to do it himself, to carry her down into the darkness one last time. But Miguel had stopped him with a hand on his shoulder. Some burdens, the foreman's eyes said, weren't meant to be carried alone. When the first shovel of dirt hit the lid, Thomas turned away, couldn't watch, couldn't bear the finality of it. He walked back toward the ranch house, while the men filled in the hole behind him. The house waited like an accusation. Every room held her ghost. The kitchen where she'd spilled flour trying to help cook. The parlor where her drawings still covered one wall, crude sketches of horses and cacti, the sun always too large and yellow. The bedroom where she'd died. He stopped in the doorway of that room, couldn't make himself enter. Her bed was still unmade. The sheets he'd thrown into the fire trying to burn away the sickness. But her doll lay on the pillow. A rag thing she'd named Button because of its mismatched button eyes. Thomas crossed to the bed, picked up the doll. It still smelled like her, soap and childhood and something indefinably sweet. He pressed it to his face and felt the tears come at last. He'd thought he had no tears left, had cried himself dry over the past 4 days. But grief wasn't a well that emptied. It was a spring that never stopped flowing. A knock pulled him back. He shoved the doll into his pocket, wiped his face with rough hands. When he opened the front door, a stranger stood there. Not a complete stranger. Thomas recognized the collar. Padre Martinez from the Santa Fe mission. They'd met once years ago when Thomas first came to this valley. The priest looked older now. Gray streaked his black hair, lines cut deep around his eyes. "Senor Merrick," the padre's voice carried genuine sorrow. "I heard about your daughter. I am deeply sorry." Thomas nodded. Couldn't trust his voice yet. "May I come in?" He stepped back, let the priest enter. They sat at the kitchen table, the same table where Lucy had eaten breakfast a week ago, had complained about the eggs being too runny. Thomas would give everything he owned to hear her complain one more time. The padre placed a leather satchel on the table, drew out a bottle of mezcal, poured 2 glasses without asking permission. "To Lucy," he said, raising his glass. Thomas drank. The liquor burned, cut through the numbness for one sharp moment. Then the fog returned. "I wish this was only a condolence visit." The padre set down his glass. "But I bring news, complicated news." "What news?" "Do you know Chief Dasan of the Chiricahua band near Whispering Spring?" Thomas knew him, knew of him at least. A peaceful chief. His people kept to themselves, traded occasionally in town, never caused trouble. "I know the name." "He has a daughter, HYN, 26 years old, educated at our mission school in Santa Fe." Thomas waited, wondered what any of this had to do with him. The padre continued, "She is in danger, serious danger. The United States Army hunts her, specifically Colonel Garrett Whitmore." Something cold moved in Thomas's chest at that name. He'd served under Whitmore, briefly, long enough to learn the man's nature. Whitmore believed the only good Apache was one on a reservation or in the ground. He pursued both outcomes with equal enthusiasm. "Why does he hunt her? She killed a soldier, Lieutenant Marcus Davis. The Army calls it murder." Thomas leaned back. This was none of his business. He had enough troubles without involving himself in Apache affairs. The padre seemed to read his thoughts. "I understand your reluctance, but please hear the full story." "I'm listening." "HYN was at our mission, learning, growing. She wanted to be a teacher, to help her people navigate the white world." The padre's voice grew heavy. "Lieutenant Davis came to the mission, said he was there to collect Apache girls, to relocate them to the reservation school, for their own good, he claimed." Thomas had heard similar claims, knew what they really meant: forced assimilation, cultural destruction wrapped in the language of charity. HYN refused to go. Davis became aggressive. Sister Maria, one of our nuns, stood between them. Davis shot her. The words fell like stones. Thomas felt his hands clench. HYN had scissors from her sewing class. She put them in Davis's throat. The padre met Thomas's eyes. She watched him bleed out. Then she ran. "Self-defense. You and I know that. The Army sees only a dead officer and an Apache killer." The padre refilled both glasses. "Whitmore was Davis's friend. He has made her capture a personal crusade." "What does this have to do with me?" "Chief Dasan sent her to me for protection, but Santa Fe isn't safe. Whitmore has men searching every mission, every church. She needs to disappear, become someone the Army cannot touch." Understanding came slowly. When it arrived, Thomas shook his head. "No. Hear my proposal first." "I don't need to hear it. Whatever you're about to suggest, the answer is no." The padre pressed on regardless. "Marriage. A paper marriage only. She lives here as your wife. The Army cannot easily move against a white man's wife. The scandal the community backlash it provides protection where law does not." Thomas stood, paced to the window. Outside he could see the men finishing at the grave, packing the earth down, making it permanent. "I just buried my daughter." "I know, and I would not ask this if there was any other way." "There has to be another way. Send her to Mexico. Whitmore will follow. He has influence across the border, and Apache are not safe in Mexico either. The rurales hunt them as sport." Thomas turned. "This is insane. I can't marry a stranger, an Apache stranger, a wanted killer." "Killer, yes, but in defense of her own life and in reaction to witnessing murder." The padre stood as well. "Senor Merrick, you were a scout. You know Apache people. You know they are human, capable of good and evil like any of us." That was the problem. Thomas did know them, had known them too well, had seen what happened when cavalry met Apache villages, had participated in things he still saw when he closed his eyes. Why me? Why not some other rancher, someone without... He gestured vaguely at the house, at the grave outside, at the wreckage of his life. Because Dasan asked for you specifically. He doesn't know me. He knows you were cavalry, knows you left the service, knows you built this ranch and employ both white and Mexican workers fairly. The padre stepped closer. He knows you are a man capable of seeing past skin color. Thomas laughed, a bitter sound. You don't know what I'm capable of. Perhaps not. But Dasan believes you are a good man, and right now his daughter needs a good man. What does he offer in return? Water rights to Whispering Spring. Thomas went still. The spring was legendary in this valley, fed by some deep aquifer that never ran dry. Even in drought years it flowed clear and cold. His own wells had been failing for months. Cattle were dying. Without water, the ranch would collapse by autumn. Permanent rights. As long as the marriage stands. And if I refuse, the padre spread his hands. Then I return to Santa Fe and tell Dasan his daughter must find another way. And you must find another source of water. And 15 families who depend on this ranch for their livelihood must find new employment. It was manipulation. Obvious manipulation. But that didn't make it less effective. Thomas returned to the table. Sat. Drank the rest of his mezcal. This would be a business arrangement. Nothing more. Completely. She would have her own room, her own space. I wouldn't... He couldn't finish the sentence. She understands. Dasan made the terms clear. Protection and paper only. How long? Until it is safe. Until Whitmore gives up or is reassigned. Could be months. Could be years. Thomas thought of Lucy, of the promise he'd made at her bedside, that he would protect people, would be better than he'd been in his cavalry days, would build instead of destroy. This wasn't what he'd imagined, but perhaps it was what was needed. When she arrives tomorrow, Dasan brings her himself, tomorrow, one day to prepare for a wife he didn't want, to empty Lucy's room, to explain to his men that their boss was marrying an Apache woman accused of murder. I want to meet her first, before any ceremony. Of course. And if I don't like what I see, the deal is off. Understood. They shook hands. The padre gathered his things and left. Thomas sat alone at the table as darkness filled the house. That night sleep was impossible. He moved through the rooms like a ghost haunting his own life. In Lucy's room he began to pack her things. Each item was a small death. Her hair ribbons, her Sunday dress still smelling of lavender, the wooden horse he'd carved while she was sick. She'd never played with it, had been too weak by the time he finished. He'd meant to place it in her coffin, some last gift for the journey, but he'd forgotten, or couldn't bear to part with it. Now it sat in his palm, smooth and small. Miguel found him there near midnight. The foreman stood in the doorway, said nothing, just waited. I'm doing something stupid, Thomas said. Probably. The padre was here, made me an offer. I heard men talk. And Miguel entered the room, sat on Lucy's bed. My mother was Apache, Mescalero band. She died when I was 9. Thomas looked up. In all the years Miguel had worked here, he'd never mentioned this. I didn't know. I pass as Mexican. It's easier, safer, but I remember her. Miguel's voice went soft. She taught me to read the land, to find water where others saw only dust, to respect what the earth gives. Why are you telling me this? Because if you marry this woman, she will be afraid, alone, in a world that wants her dead. Miguel met his eyes. Treat her as human, not as transaction, not as burden. That's all I ask. I don't know if I can. I don't know if I have anything left to give. You have more than you think, boss. Miguel stood, moved to the door, stopped. Lucy would want you to save someone. She had that kind of heart. After he left, Thomas continued packing. When he reached the fever-stained sheets, he carried them outside, built a small fire, watched them burn. It felt like a ritual, an ending, but also perhaps a beginning. Dawn broke cold and clear. Thomas hadn't slept. He stood on the porch, coffee in hand, watching the horizon. Somewhere out there, an Apache woman rode toward him, a stranger who would become his wife, a killer who needed protection, a person whose life now depended on his choice. The dust cloud appeared around noon. 8 riders. Thomas could make out their silhouettes even at a distance. Apache, moving with the easy grace of people born to the saddle. Miguel emerged from the barn, stood beside him. Ready? No. Good. Means you're thinking clearly. The riders grew closer. Thomas could distinguish individuals now. An old man in front, silver hair, turquoise around his neck. This would be Dasan. Beside him rode a younger man, heavily muscled, a scar cutting across his cheek, the war leader probably, face set in permanent anger, and slightly apart from both a woman. Thomas's breath caught. She rode like someone who'd been doing it since before she could walk. Back straight, hands light on the reins. She wore a dark blue dress, convent clothing, but Apache shell earrings caught the light, a small rebellion. Her face was composed, stern, beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with softness. This was beauty forged in fire, sharp and dangerous. They reached the ranch yard, dismounted. The old man stepped forward. "I am Dasan." His English was accented but clear. "You are Thomas Merrick, scout under Captain Reynolds, 1878 to 79. Thomas nodded, wondered how much Dasan knew about those years, about what Reynolds had ordered, about what Thomas had done. "I left that life behind." Men never leave war behind. They carry it. Dasan's eyes were sharp, reading him, measuring. But perhaps they can choose what they carry forward. The scarred man spoke, his voice rough as gravel. "This is mistake Dasan. He will betray her." "Kohana, enough." The woman's voice cut through, cold as winter water. "I chose this." She stepped forward, met Thomas's eyes. Hers were dark, intelligent, utterly without fear. "I am HYN. Thomas." They stood measuring each other, two strangers about to bind their lives together. Around them the men shifted, uncomfortable. This wasn't how marriages were supposed to begin. Dasan broke the silence. Padre Martinez explained terms. He did. "You agree?" Thomas looked at HYN, tried to see past the surface, to understand what kind of person would kill a man, what kind of person would accept marriage to a stranger rather than run. "I agree, but I have conditions." "Speak them." "She gets her own room, her own space. This is protection only." "Understood." "She's free to leave the ranch grounds." "I won't make her a prisoner." HYN's expression shifted slightly, surprise maybe, or appreciation. "If Colonel Whitmore comes, I'll do what I can, but I can't guarantee safety against the United States Army. We ask only what you can give." Dasan gestured toward his daughter. "She is strong. She will not be burdened." Thomas looked at HYN again. "I just buried my daughter 4 days ago. This house is full of grief. If you stay here, you'll feel it." For the first time, something flickered in her eyes. Not pity, something harder, understanding, perhaps. "I have my own grief," she said. "We can carry them separately." Padre Martinez arrived an hour later. The ceremony was brief, brutal in its simplicity. No guests beyond those already present, no flowers, no music, just words spoken over two people who barely knew each other's names. Thomas took HYN's hand when instructed. Her skin was cold, or his was. He couldn't tell. "Do you, Thomas Merrick, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife?" He thought of Lucy, of the promise he'd made, of the water his people needed, of the woman standing before him who'd killed to survive. "I do." "Do you, HYN, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband?" Her voice was steady, no hesitation. "I do." "Then by the power vested in me, I pronounce you husband and wife." No one suggested a kiss. They simply stepped apart. HYN's eyes lingered on Thomas as he turned away. Something about his face struck her. The shape of his jaw, the way his shoulders carried weight that wasn't physical, the lines around his eyes that spoke of nightmares. She'd seen that face before, 5 years ago, Gila Bend. She'd been hiding in yucca shadows, 19 years old, and watching her world burn. A young soldier had knelt beside her mother's body, had tried to help, his hands shaking, his face twisted with horror when his captain ordered him away. This face, the same face. Recognition hit like a fist to the chest. She'd married the soldier who'd let her mother die, who'd followed orders instead of conscience, who'd ridden away while her mother bled out in the dust. The irony was bitter as poison, but she said nothing. Not yet. The secret settled in her chest like a stone, heavy, patient, waiting. The Apache delegation prepared to leave. Dasan approached his daughter, spoke in their language. Soft words Thomas couldn't understand. HYN answered, her voice harder than her father's. An argument maybe, or a goodbye. Kohana came next, stood close to Thomas. His hand rested on his knife. I will know if you mistreat her. I will come. Understood. And if you betray her to Whitmore, I will cut your heart out while you watch. Thomas met his eyes. If I betray her, you'll have earned the right. Kohana studied him a long moment, then nodded, a fraction of respect appearing where only hostility had been. The riders mounted, began to leave, but Dasan turned back. Thomas Merrick, she killed soldier who tried to rape her. Army says she murdered him. Truth is, she defended herself. He paused. When Whitmore comes, and he will come, you must decide, her life or your peace. Then they were gone, dust rising in their wake. Thomas and HYN stood in the yard, married, strangers, bound by necessity and law. Miguel approached, spoke to HYN in Spanish. She answered in the same language, fluid and natural. They spoke for several minutes. Thomas caught enough to understand Miguel was offering help, explaining how things worked on the ranch, being kind in a way Thomas hadn't thought to be. Sean appeared with a carpet bag. Brought this from the bunkhouse boss, figured the lady would need a room. Thomas led HYN inside. The house felt smaller with her in it, more crowded. He showed her to Lucy's room, had emptied it that morning. Nothing remained but furniture and blank walls. This is yours. She entered, looked around. Her eyes found the scratches on the doorframe, the growth chart Lucy had insisted on, names and dates marked in Thomas's careful hand. A child lived here. It wasn't a question. My daughter, she died. Recently, 4 days ago. HYN turned, really looked at him for the first time, saw perhaps the exhaustion, the grief, the barely held together pieces of a broken man. I'm sorry. Are you? Yes, losing a child is a wound that never closes. You've lost one. No, but I've seen those who have. She moved to the window, looked out at the yard. This arrangement was your father's choice or yours? Thomas wasn't sure how to answer. Both. Neither. I needed water. You needed protection. Seemed practical. Practical. She tasted the word. Yes, that's one word for it. He left her there, went to his own room, closed the door, sat on the bed and put his head in his hands. What had he done? Evening came. Thomas heard movement in the house, water running, doors opening and closing, HYN moving through her new prison, because that's what it was, wasn't it? A comfortable prison. Better than hanging, but still bounded by walls she hadn't chosen. Dinner was quiet. Miguel had prepared food, left it on the table. Thomas ate alone, assumed HYN would do the same in her room. But she appeared in the doorway, stood watching him. May I eat with you? He gestured to a chair. She sat, took food. They ate in silence. After several minutes she spoke. Why did you agree the truth? I told you, water. That's reason, not truth. Men don't marry strangers only for water. Thomas set down his fork. My daughter believed in protecting people, the weak, the helpless. She had that kind of heart. He met HYN's eyes. I want to be the kind of man she believed I was. And you think I'm weak, helpless. No, I think you're strong. But you still need protecting. From Whitmore, among others. She was quiet for a moment, then, I killed Lieutenant Davis. Your father-in-law told you this. He did. Do you want to know how? Thomas wasn't sure he did, but he nodded. HYN's voice went flat. reciting facts, removing emotion. He came to the mission, said he was rescuing Apache girls from savage ways, taking us to reservation school for our own good. She paused. I refused. He grabbed me. Sister Maria stepped between us. He shot her in the chest. Thomas felt his hands clench. I had scissors from sewing class. When he turned back to me, I put them in his throat. Her eyes met his, hard, unflinching. I watched him bleed, watched the light leave his eyes, and I felt nothing but relief. Self-defense. The Army doesn't see it that way. They see murdered officer, savage Apache, simple story. But not the true story. Truth is complicated. People prefer simple. Sean knocked on the doorframe, entered carrying a paper. His face was troubled. Boss Ryder from town brought this. He handed over a wanted poster. Thomas unfolded it, saw HYN's face rendered in crude ink. The description beneath listed her crimes, the reward offered for her capture. $500. Dead or alive. Thomas looked at HYN. She'd gone very still. You knew about this? Dasan told me posters were circulating. I didn't know they'd reached here. You should have told me before the ceremony. Would it have changed your answer? He wanted to say yes, wanted to claim some moral high ground, but the truth was more complicated. The ranch needed water, his men needed jobs, and somewhere buried deep was the memory of a little girl who believed her father was a hero. No, probably not. Relief flickered across her face. Then what does it matter? Sean cleared his throat. Boss, if word gets out she's here, then we deal with it. Thomas stood, moved to the stove, tossed the poster into the fire, watched it curl and blacken. She's my wife. Anyone has a problem with that can speak to me directly. After Sean left, Thomas and HYN remained in the kitchen. The fire crackled. Outside, night sounds filled the valley. Coyotes calling, wind in the cottonwoods. Why are you doing this? HYN asked. Truly. Thomas thought about it. About Lucy. About the things he'd done as a scout. About the man he'd been versus the man he wanted to be. Because I've failed enough people. I don't want to fail another. She studied him. You think you failed your daughter. I know I did. Couldn't save her from disease. Couldn't even make her last days comfortable. That's not failure. That's being human. Feels the same. HYN stood, moved to the doorway, paused there. I won't thank you. This is transaction, protection for water, but I will say this. She looked back. I won't make it harder than it needs to be. Neither will I. She went to her room. Thomas heard the door close, the lock turn. Smart woman. Trusting a stranger only so far. He sat alone in the kitchen, pulled Lucy's wooden horse from his pocket, turned it over in his hands. I hope I'm doing the right thing, little bird, he whispered to the empty room. I hope you'd understand. The horse had no answer. But outside through the window, he could see the mountains where whispering spring flowed. Water for his dying land, life for his struggling ranch. And in exchange, all he had to do was protect a woman who'd killed to survive. It seemed in some strange way like the least he could do, like the smallest step toward becoming the man his daughter had believed him to be. Thomas went to bed that night in a house that held two kinds of grief, his own fresh and raw, and HYN's older but no less deep. They were strangers bound by law and necessity, two wounded people who'd agreed to share space without sharing anything that mattered. He didn't sleep, didn't expect to, just lay in the dark listening to the house settle, wondering what morning would bring, what Whitmore would do when he discovered where HYN had gone, what it would cost to keep this fragile agreement intact. But for now, for tonight, he'd made a choice, had offered protection to someone who needed it, had done something Lucy would have approved of. It would have to be enough. In the room down the hall, HYN sat by her window, looked out at the stars, touched the rosary she wore hidden beneath her dress. Sister Maria's rosary, taken from the nun's body after Davis had shot her. She prayed, not for forgiveness, not for salvation, just for the strength to survive one more day in a world that wanted her dead. And in the space between their separate griefs, something new began to take shape. Not love, not even friendship, but perhaps the first thread of understanding that they were both people trying to outrun their pasts, both people who'd killed and been killed by circumstances beyond their control, both people looking for something they'd lost. For Thomas, it was innocence, the belief that he could protect those he loved. For HYN, it was freedom, the right to exist without apology or explanation. Neither knew if they'd find what they sought, but they'd taken the first step on a path neither had planned to walk. And sometimes that was all survival required. One step, one choice, one stranger willing to take a risk on another stranger. The marriage was business. The danger was real. And somewhere between the two, a fragile thread neither had asked for began to pull taut. Outside, the desert night stretched vast and indifferent. Coyotes sang to the moon. Wind carried dust across empty places. And in the distance, too far to see, but close enough to feel, Colonel Garrett Whitmore sat in his tent, planning his next move. The hunt wasn't over. It had barely begun. But for one night in a ranch house in the Gila Valley, two people who'd had everything taken from them found something small and unexpected. Not peace, not happiness, just the temporary absence of immediate danger. And in a world as hard as theirs, that was a kind of miracle all its own. The first week passed in careful silence. Thomas and HYN moved through the house like ghosts occupying separate planes. They shared space but little else. Meals were eaten in quiet, conversations limited to necessities. Where is the salt? The well needs checking. Good night. But the ranch had rhythms that forced proximity, work that demanded cooperation, and slowly, without either intending it, the distance between them began to narrow. HYN refused help at first, would carry water from the spring herself, 2 miles each way, 4 trips a day. Miguel offered to send a man with a wagon. She'd looked at him with such fierce pride that he'd stepped back, hands raised. "As you wish, Señora." She'd softened slightly. "I don't need white man's charity." "I'm not white," Miguel had said gently. "Half Apache, Mescalero mother." That had stopped her. She'd studied him with new eyes, seen something there that made her nod. After that, she'd accepted food he left outside her door, would leave the clean plate in return, small acknowledgments of alliance. Thomas watched these exchanges, said nothing. But he noticed the way she tested them all, pushed boundaries to see who respected them, who could be trusted, and who merely tolerated her presence. Sean learned quickly. Had tried to help her mend a fence the 3rd day. She'd turned on him, eyes blazing. "I don't need your help." He'd backed off. But Thomas had seen the hurt in the Irishman's face, the confusion. Sean was trying to be kind, couldn't understand why kindness was being rejected. Later, Thomas had found him in the barn. "Don't take it personal." "Hard not to, boss. Just trying to be decent." "She doesn't know decent yet, only knows survival." Thomas had paused. "Give her time. Let her come to you." It was good advice. Whether he could follow it himself remained to be seen. The thaw began over a broken fence. Thomas found HYN in the south pasture repairing rails with practiced efficiency. She'd stripped off her convent dress, wore simple cotton underneath. Moved with the economy of someone who'd done this work before. He'd approached slowly, not wanting to startle her. "You know your way around a fence." She hadn't looked up. "Apache don't live in cities. We build, we fix, we survive." "Didn't mean to imply otherwise." "Yes, you did. All white men do." She'd driven another nail. "You think we're savages, primitives, that your way is the only civilized way." Thomas had picked up a rail, positioned it. "I think civilization is a word people use to justify terrible things." That had made her pause. "Look at him. What would you know about terrible things? More than I'd like." They'd worked side by side after that, not speaking, just the rhythm of hammer and nail, wood and sweat. When they finished, the fence stood strong. HYN had wiped her brow. "You work well, for a white man. You work well, for anyone." The corner of her mouth had twitched. Not quite a smile, but close. Sean had seen them return together, had watched with surprise as they'd shared a dipper of water from the same bucket. Small thing, but on this ranch, small things carried weight. That night Miguel had brought news. Someone's coming, from the Apache camp. Woman on horseback. Thomas and HYN had gone to meet her. The rider was young, 20, maybe, pretty in a way that had nothing to do with trying. Natural as sunrise. She'd dismounted with a laugh, embraced HYN. Sister, HYN had stiffened, then softened. Kiona, what are you doing here? Father sent me, to check on you. Kiona's eyes had found Thomas, assessed him. To make sure your husband treats you well. I'm fine. Are you? Kiona had circled Thomas, like a bird studying something new. He looked sad, ghosts in his eyes. Everyone has ghosts, Thomas had said. Yes, but some carry them better than others. She'd smiled, bright and warm. Everything HYN wasn't. I'll stay a few days. Keep my sister company, unless you object. Thomas had looked at HYN, seen the first real warmth in her face since she'd arrived. You're welcome here. Kiona had changed things, brought light where only shadows had been. She'd laughed easily, asked questions without fear, explored the ranch like a child discovering a new world. Miguel had been the one to show her around. Thomas had watched them from the porch. The way Miguel's usual reserve crumbled around her. How he'd pointed out horses explained the work his hands animated in ways they never were otherwise. And Kiona. She'd listened with complete attention, asked about everything, touched nothing without permission. When Miguel had lifted her onto a horse, she'd laughed with pure joy. You're a good teacher. You're a good student. They'd ridden together that afternoon, disappeared toward the spring. Thomas had felt a twinge of concern, but HYN had touched his arm. Let them be. Kiona is smart. She knows what she's doing. And Miguel, he has kind eyes, like you. She'd paused. When you let yourself be kind. It was the most personal thing she'd said to him. He hadn't known how to respond. At the spring, Miguel and Kiona had dismounted, let the horses drink, stood in the shade of cottonwoods. You're not full Mexican, Kiona had said. Statement, not question. Miguel had gone still. What makes you say that? The way you stand, how you watch the horizon. We do that. Apache do that. She'd smiled. You're half, aren't you? No point lying. She'd seen through him already. My mother. Mescalero band. She died when I was 9. And you hide it. I survive it. People don't hire half-breeds, but a Mexican foreman that they'll accept. Kiona had moved closer. I understand hiding. I want to leave the tribe, see the world beyond these valleys, but Father would never allow it. Why tell me this? Because you keep secrets. I keep secrets. Maybe we can keep each other's. Miguel had looked at her then, really looked, seen not just beauty but intelligence, courage, the kind of person who knew what she wanted and wasn't afraid to reach for it. What's your secret? He'd asked. That I'm tired of being only Apache. I want to be Kiona, just Kiona. She'd touched his hand. What's yours? That I'm tired of being only Mexican. Want to be Miguel, just Miguel. They'd laughed. And in that laughter something had sparked. Recognition, understanding. The beginning of something neither had planned but both needed. A week into Kiona's visit, Thomas found Sean in the bunkhouse. The Irishman was drunk, not falling down drunk, but the kind of drunk that loosened tongues and lowered walls. He'd been crying. Thomas could see the tracks on his weathered face. Sean, go away, boss, not fit company tonight. Thomas had sat anyway. What's wrong? Anniversary of sorts. Sean had taken another drink. 10 years ago today, I killed a family. The words hung in the air. Thomas waited. Apache family, 1879. Captain Reynolds said they were hostiles, said they'd raided settlers, needed to be stopped. Sean's voice cracked. Wasn't true. They were peaceful. Mother, father, 3 children. Thomas felt his chest tighten, knew what was coming. Youngest girl was maybe 6, Lucy's age. She looked at me before Sean broke. I see her face every night, every goddamn night. The door had opened. HYN stood there. She must have heard, must have been passing, and stopped. Sean looked up, saw her. Shame flooded his features. "I'm sorry. God, I'm so sorry." She'd entered slowly, sat across from him. Her face was unreadable. "Do you remember their names?" "No, never knew them." "Then how do you honor them?" Sean had stared at her. "What, if you don't know their names, how do you honor their memory?" "I don't. Can't. Don't deserve to." HYN had been quiet for a long moment. "My cousin died in a raid, 1879, Gila Bend. He was 7, named Nakai, loved to climb trees, wanted to be a warrior." Sean's face had gone white. "Gila Bend, that was us, my unit. I know." "Then you should hate me." "I did, for years." She'd looked at him with something that wasn't forgiveness, but wasn't hate either. "But hate doesn't bring back the dead, it just makes more ghosts." "How do you live with it?" "The knowing. I remember. I speak their names. I make sure they're not forgotten." She'd stood. "You can't bring them back, Sean O'Halloran, but you can remember them. That's the only honor you can give." After she'd left, Sean had looked at Thomas. "You were there too, at Gila Bend." It wasn't a question. "Yes." "You tried to stop it, I remember. You argued with Reynolds, said it was wrong." "I argued. Then I followed orders anyway." Thomas's voice was hollow. 17 people died. I helped kill them." "Boss, HYN knows, has to know. It's why she looks at me the way she does sometimes. Like she's trying to decide if I'm worth the space I take up." Sean had wiped his face. "What did Reynolds tell you about the camp? That they'd attacked a wagon train, killed settlers, that we were bringing justice." "Same lie he told all of us." Sean had poured another drink, didn't take it, just stared at it. "Found out later, wasn't them. Was a different band entirely. We killed innocent people on bad intelligence and a captain's prejudice." Thomas had stood, moved to the window, could see HYN's light in her room. "Does she know you were there?" Seems to know everything." Sean had finally drunk. "How do we live with this, boss?" "We don't. We just keep moving. Hope the ghosts get tired of following." But Thomas knew his ghosts would never tire, knew they'd follow him to the grave and probably beyond. The next day, HYN had found him fixing a saddle, had approached with the careful neutrality she used when something important needed saying. "Sean told me something last night, after he sobered up." Thomas kept his hands busy, didn't look at her. "What did he say?" "That you were at Gila Bend, the raid, 1879. His hands stilled. "Yes." "Why didn't you tell me? Would it have mattered? Changed anything?" "I don't know. Maybe." She'd moved closer. "Tell me what happened." So he did. Told her about Reynolds, about being a scout, about how the captain had used his intelligence to target camps, how Thomas had believed at first that they were stopping raids, protecting settlers. "When did you realize you were wrong?" "Gila Bend. We rode in at dawn, expected warriors, found families." His voice went flat. "Children, elders, people sleeping. Reynolds ordered the attack anyway." "And you followed orders?" "I refused, at first. He threatened court-martial, execution for cowardice." Thomas finally looked at her. "I followed orders. 17 people died. Your cousin among them." HYN's face was stone. "Did you kill him, Nakai?" "I don't know. The fighting was... I fired my rifle. Don't know where the bullets went. Could have been him. Could have been someone else's child." "But you were there, part of it." "Yes." She'd been quiet for a long time, just stood there processing. Thomas waited for the anger, the disgust, the demand that he annul the marriage and send her away. Instead, she'd asked, "Why did you leave the army?" "Because I couldn't do it again. Couldn't follow more orders that turned me into something I hated." "So you came here, built a ranch, Tried to be better. Tried. Not sure I succeeded. You married me, protected me. That's something. It's not enough. Doesn't balance the scales. HYN had reached out, stopped just short of touching him. Nothing balances those scales. The dead stay dead, the ghosts stay ghosts. She'd pulled her hand back. But we can choose what we do next. That's all we have. Can you live here knowing what I was, what I did? She'd looked around the ranch, at the mountains beyond, at the sky stretching endless and blue. I killed a man, watched him bleed out. I'm not innocent either. She'd met his eyes. We're both people trying to outrun what we've done. Maybe that's enough to understand each other. I don't deserve understanding. Neither do I, but here we are. That evening, they'd eaten dinner together, not in silence this time, talking. Small things, the weather, the cattle, the way cottonwood leaves sounded like rain when the wind blew through them. Kiona had watched them with knowing eyes. Your softening sister. I'm being practical. Hard to live with someone if you hate them. Is that what you're doing? Being practical. HYN hadn't answered, but Thomas had seen the way she'd glanced at him when she thought he wasn't looking. Something in her face that hadn't been there before. Not forgiveness, not yet. But maybe the beginning of it. The cavalry arrived on a Tuesday. 30 men in blue coats, horses, raising dust that could be seen for miles. Thomas had been in the barn when Miguel came running. Boss, soldiers, colonels leading them. Thomas felt ice in his gut. Whitmore. He'd known this was coming, had prepared himself. But knowing and facing were different things. Get HYN, hide her in the cellar. Already done. Kiona's with her. Smart. Miguel was always 3 steps ahead. Thomas walked out to meet them. The column halted in his yard. At their head rode Colonel Garrett Whitmore, 52 years old, mustache waxed to cruel points, eyes like winter sky. Merrick, Whitmore's voice carried parade ground authority. It's been a long time. Colonel, heard you took a wife. Congratulations. The word dripped with something that wasn't congratulations. Apache wife specifically. Unusual choice for a former scout. I'm not cavalry anymore. Once cavalry, always cavalry. You know duty, loyalty, brotherhood. Whitmore dismounted, approached slowly. Those things don't fade just because you trade a uniform for overalls. Thomas held his ground. What brings you to my ranch, Colonel? Hunting a fugitive, Apache woman. Murdered Lieutenant Marcus Davis in cold blood. Whitmore pulled a poster from his saddlebag, unfolded it. HYN's face stared out. Last tracked to the Santa Fe mission. Padre said she headed this direction. Haven't seen her. No. Whitmore's eyes scanned the ranch buildings. Mind if I look around professional courtesy between old comrades? I mind. Excuse me, this is private property. You have a warrant. Whitmore's jaw tightened. Don't need a warrant to look for fugitives. Actually, you do. Or did they change the Constitution while I wasn't paying attention? Miguel had appeared. Stood at Thomas's shoulder. Silent support. 4 vaqueros emerged from the barn. Not threatening. Just present. Whitmore noticed. Awful loyal crew you've got here, Merrick. Wonder what they'd think if they knew you were harboring a killer. I'm not harboring anyone. Then you won't mind if I meet your wife. Courtesy call. Congratulate her on the marriage. Thomas felt sweat on his back. She's indisposed. Female troubles. It was crude, deliberately so. The kind of thing that made men uncomfortable, stopped questions. Whitmore studied him. You're hiding something. I can smell it. You smell what you want to smell. If I find you're harboring Lieutenant Davis's murderer, I'll burn this ranch to the foundation. Everything you built, everything your father built, gone. That a threat, Colonel? A promise between old comrades? Miguel stepped forward. Colonel, with respect, Senor Merrick's wife is his business. Whitmore's attention shifted. And you are Miguel Reyes, foreman. Whitmore moved closer, studied Miguel's face. You look familiar. Mescalero features. You Apache. Mexican, sir. Common mistake. Is it? Whitmore circled him like a wolf. Strange how many Mexicans in this territory have Apache blood, almost like people are lying about their heritage. Miguel held steady. I'm who I say I am. We'll see. Whitmore returned to his horse, mounted. You have 48 hours, Merrick. Reconsider your discretion. Davis was my friend. His killer will hang. You can be the man who helped justice, or the man who burned trying to stop it. He wheeled his horse. The column followed. But 2 soldiers remained behind, pitched a tent just beyond the property line. Watching, one called out, making sure nobody runs. After they left, Thomas went to the cellar, found HYN and Kiona in the darkness. Both women stood when he entered. He knows you're here, or suspects it. Then I should leave. Tonight, before he comes back with a warrant. Where would you go? Mexico, somewhere he can't follow. He has influence in Mexico, and the rurales hunt Apache for sport. Thomas shook his head. You stay, we prepare. Kiona touched her sister's arm. He's right. Running now just makes you pray. That night they gathered in the kitchen. Thomas, HYN, Miguel, Sean, Kiona. A war council of sorts. Whitmore will return, Thomas said, with legal authority. When he does, we need a plan. Can't fight the army, Sean pointed out. Not directly, but we can make it harder for him, slow him down. HYN stood, paced. There's something you should know, about Davis, about what really happened. Everyone waited. She took a breath. He didn't just try to take me from the mission, he killed someone first. Thomas felt his hands clench. Sister Maria, the nun who'd been teaching me. She was Mexican, 60 years old, kindest person I'd ever known. HYN's voice stayed level, refusing to break. When Davis came, she stood between us, told him he couldn't take me, that I was under church protection. And he shot her, in the chest, point blank. HYN's eyes were dry but hard. I watched her fall, watched her die, and then he turned to me, said it was my fault, that I'd killed her by being difficult. Miguel crossed himself. Sean muttered something in Gaelic. Thomas asked, The scissors were on the table from our sewing lesson. I grabbed them when he reached for me, put them in his throat. Watched him bleed the same way Sister Maria had bled. She looked at Thomas. I'm not sorry I killed him, only sorry I couldn't save her. The weight of it settled over the room. The Army knows about Sister Maria, Thomas asked. If they do, they don't care. She was Mexican. I'm Apache. Davis was an officer. That's all that matters. Truth matters. Does it? In your experience, does truth actually matter when it contradicts what powerful people want to believe? Thomas had no answer for that. The conversation shifted to practicalities, food stores, ammunition, escape routes if needed. They were still planning when a commotion outside made them freeze. Gunshots, shouting, a woman's scream. They'd rushed out to find chaos. Jesse Whitmore, the colonel's younger brother, led 6 vigilantes. They had Miguel and Kiona, had caught them at the spring. Now they'd dragged them back to the ranch hands bound. Jesse was 30, mean in the way of men who'd never been checked. He held a rope around Miguel's neck. Well, well, caught us a Mexican and his Apache whore. Miguel's face was bloody. They'd beaten him. Kiona had a split lip, tears on her face but fury in her eyes. Thomas stepped forward. Let them go. Can't do that. See, Apache killed the Henderson family last month. Time for justice. That wasn't this tribe. That was Chiricahua, different band entirely. Apache's Apache. And this one, Jesse kicked Miguel, was helping her, probably planning to run, take Apache secrets back to her people. Sean had his rifle. So did the vaqueros. But they were outnumbered, and Jesse had a knife to Kiona's throat. How about this, Jesse said. You hand over the killer you're hiding, the one my brother's hunting, and we let these 2 go. HYN had started forward. Thomas grabbed her arm. Don't. He'll kill them. He'll kill you, Jesse laughed. Smart man. See, we know she's here. Everyone knows. Little Apache bride. Figured we'd smoke her out. I'm not Apache, a new voice said. Everyone turned. A woman stood in the ranch house doorway. Dark hair, dark eyes. wearing Tyen's convent dress. It took Thomas a moment to realize it wasn't Tyen. The build was wrong, the face different. Kiona gasped. Imala! The woman was Imala, Kohana's wife. She must have come while they were inside, must have heard everything. Now she stood offering herself as decoy. Jesse hesitated. You the killer. I'm Apache. That's all you care about, isn't it? While Jesse was distracted, Thomas moved. So did Sean. So did the vaqueros. They'd fought together long enough to know each other's rhythms. Thomas shot the rope from Jesse's hand. Sean tackled the man holding Kiona. Miguel even bound, threw himself backward into his captor. The vaqueros opened fire. It wasn't clean, wasn't heroic, was desperate and messy and terrifying. But when the smoke cleared, the vigilantes were running. Jesse was on the ground, shot in the shoulder. Not fatal. But he wouldn't be using that arm for a while. Thomas stood over him. Tell your brother. Tell him I shot you. Tell him to come himself next time instead of sending cowards. They'd carried the wounded inside. Miguel's ribs were cracked. Sean had taken a knife to the leg. One of the vaqueros, Juan, had a bullet graze, but they were alive. Tyen treated the wounds. Kiona helped. Imala sat with Kohana's sister, who'd appeared with 2 more warriors. The Apache had been watching, protecting their own. Miguel regained consciousness as Tyen wrapped his ribs. Kiona was holding his hand. He looked up at her, then at Thomas. Everyone knows now that I'm half Apache. Thomas sat beside the bed. I always knew. You did. Why do you think I hired you? Needed someone who understood both worlds. He paused. Your blood doesn't matter to me. Your work does. Your loyalty does. You've proven both. Miguel's eyes welled. Thank you, boss. Thank me by healing up. We're going to need everyone for what comes next. Kiona leaned down, kissed Miguel's forehead. Rest now. I'll stay with you. Tyen and Thomas stepped outside. Dawn was breaking, pink and gold across the mountains. Imala risked herself for me, Tyen said. Your people protect their own. She's not my people. She's Kohana's wife. We're barely related. Maybe that's what people means. Not blood, but choice. Thomas looked at her. You've been choosing us, little by little, since you arrived. Have I? The fence, the dinner conversations, the way you treated Sean after his confession. He paused. The way you're standing here instead of running. Tyen was quiet for a moment. Then I can't forgive you for Gila Bend. That's not mine to give. The dead can't forgive. I know. But I can try to see you as more than the soldier you were, can try to see the man you're becoming. That's more than I deserve. Probably. But it's what I choose to give. She'd started to turn away. Thomas caught her hand. She froze. Looked at their joined hands. Didn't pull away. When Whitmore comes back, and he will, it's going to get worse. I know. You could still run. I could help you. Get you across the border somewhere safe. There is no somewhere safe. Not for women like me. She met his eyes. Besides, I'm tired of running. Tired of being only what others make me. Victim, killer, Apache, savage. What do you want to be? Tyen. Just Tyen. A woman who made hard choices, who did what she had to do, who deserves to live without apology. You do deserve that. Then help me have it. Help me stand my ground. Thomas squeezed her hand. I will, whatever it costs. They stood there as the sun rose. 2 people who'd been strangers a month ago, who'd married out of necessity, who were becoming something neither had planned. Not lovers, not quite friends, but allies, partners in survival. Inside, Miguel and Kiona were falling asleep, her head on his shoulder. Sean was getting his leg stitched by Imala, flirting in broken Spanish. The vaqueros were checking weapons, preparing for the next fight. The ranch had become more than a ranch, had become a fortress, a sanctuary, a place where people who didn't fit anywhere else had found a way to fit together. But outside, beyond the property line, Whitmore's men watched. And in town, the colonel was getting a warrant, gathering more troops. preparing for a reckoning that would test every alliance, every choice, every fragile thread of trust they'd woven. The peace wouldn't last. They all knew it. But for now, for this morning, they had each other, had chosen to stand together against what was coming. And sometimes, in a world as hard as theirs, that was all you could ask for. Not safety, not certainty, just the knowledge that when the darkness came, you wouldn't face it alone. HYN looked at Thomas, really looked, saw the ghosts he carried, the guilt, the desperate need to be better than he'd been. "Your daughter," she said quietly. "Lucy, she would be proud of you." Thomas felt his throat tighten. "You think so? I know so. You're protecting someone who needs it, standing up to power, choosing right over easy." She paused. "That's what good fathers teach their daughters, to do the same." It was the kindest thing anyone had said to him since Lucy died, maybe the kindest thing anyone had ever said. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet. War's coming, and when it does, I need to know you'll still stand with me, even when it gets hard, even when it costs everything." Thomas thought of the ranch, his father's legacy, the life he'd built, everything Whitmore could destroy with one match. Then he thought of Lucy's wooden horse, of Sister Maria dying to protect someone, of 17 people at Gila Bend who'd never gotten a choice. "I'll stand with you," he said. "Whatever comes." HYN nodded, believed him, and in that belief something shifted between them, the last wall crumbling, not into love, not yet, but into something that might become love, given time. Trust, the rarest and most valuable thing in their world. They went inside together, to face whatever morning brought, to prepare for the war they knew was coming, to hold on to the fragile peace they'd built from grief and necessity and unexpected understanding. The sun climbed higher, the horses stirred in their stalls. The valley stretched vast and beautiful and utterly indifferent to the small human dramas playing out beneath its sky. And somewhere in town, Colonel Garrett Whitmore signed a warrant, gathered his men, prepared to take back what he believed belonged to justice. The collision was inevitable, had been since the moment Thomas agreed to marry HYN, since the moment she'd put scissors in Davis's throat, since the moment Whitmore had decided vengeance mattered more than truth. But now at least they wouldn't face it divided. They'd face it together, a rancher and an Apache, a foreman and a free spirit, an Irishman and a widow, vaqueros and warriors, people who'd been broken by the world and had somehow found a way to be whole again in each other's company. It wouldn't be enough to stop what was coming, but it might be enough to survive it, and survival in the end was its own kind of victory. 3 days after the fight with Jesse Whitmore's vigilantes, the ranch settled into uneasy calm. Miguel healed slowly, ribs wrapped tight. Sean limped but refused to rest. The vaqueros kept watch in shifts, rifles always loaded. They all knew the quiet wouldn't last. It didn't. Colonel Garrett Whitmore arrived alone on a gray horse, no soldiers behind him. Thomas saw him coming from a distance, the solitary rider moving slow across the valley floor. Something about it felt wrong. Whitmore never traveled without his men. Thomas met him at the gate, rifle in hand but pointed down. "Colonel?" Whitmore dismounted. He looked older in the harsh afternoon light, lines deeper around his eyes, the wax in his mustache beginning to droop. "Put the rifle away, Merrick. I'm here to talk. Nothing more." "Talk about what?" "About ending this before more people get hurt." Whitmore gestured to the ranch house. "May I?" Against his better judgment, Thomas nodded. They walked to the porch, sat in chairs that had held Thomas and Lucy on summer evenings. The memory of her laughter seemed to hang in the air. A ghost neither man acknowledged. Whitmore pulled out a flask, offered it. Thomas shook his head. "Suit yourself." The colonel drank, wiped his mouth. "My brother's recovering. Won't use that arm properly again. Doctor says permanent damage. He came here armed, threatened my people, got what he earned." "I know. Jesse's always been a fool, hot-headed, too quick to violence." Whitmore looked out at the valley. "But he's still my brother, only family I have left." Thomas said nothing, waited. The Henderson family massacre. You heard about it. Heard Apache raiders killed them. Whole family burned the homestead. That's right. Mother, father, 2 children, 9 and 11 years old. Whitmore's voice went flat. Found them 3 days after. Coyotes had been at the bodies, had to bury what remained. I'm sorry for that, but it wasn't Dasan's band, wasn't Tayan's people. How do you know? Because Dasan's band hasn't raided in 5 years. They trade peacefully, keep to themselves. The Hendersons were killed by Chiricahua, different tribe entirely. Whitmore shook his head. Apache is Apache to most people. They don't see distinctions. They see brown skin and violence. They want blood for blood. That's not justice, that's revenge. Sometimes they're the same thing. Whitmore turned to face him. Here's what I came to offer. A way out for both of us. Thomas felt his gut tighten. Turn over the Apache woman, the one who killed Marcus Davis. I know she's here. Everyone knows. Stop protecting her. She's my wife. In name, not in truth. You married her for water rights, for practical reasons, not love. Whitmore leaned forward. Give her up. I'll make sure the trial's fair. Quick, she won't suffer long. You're asking me to hand her over to be hanged. I'm asking you to do your duty. Davis's family deserves justice. His mother still cries herself to sleep every night. His sister can't look at men without seeing her brother's ghost. And Sister Maria, the nun Davis murdered, where's her justice? Whitmore's eyes narrowed. What nun? The one Davis shot before Tayan killed him. 60-year-old Mexican woman named Maria. She stood between them. Davis put a bullet in her chest. That's not in any report. Of course it isn't, because a dead Mexican nun doesn't matter to the Army. Only dead white officers matter. Whitmore was quiet for a long moment. Even if that's true, Davis is still dead. The law still demands accounting. The law demands lots of things it doesn't deliver, like protection for Apache women, like consequences for officers who rape and murder. Thomas stood. Answers no. Tayan stays. I'm offering you everything, Merrick. Your ranch debt. Forgiven. $1,000 reward money. Clean record with the territorial government. Whitmore stood as well. All you have to do is stop protecting a killer. Thomas thought about it, really thought. The ranch was drowning in debt. The bank would foreclose by autumn without a miracle. $1,000 would save everything, would keep 15 families employed, would preserve his father's legacy, Lucy's legacy. He looked at the wooden horse in his pocket, the one he carried everywhere, the reminder of what mattered. No, you're a fool. Maybe. But I'm a fool who keeps his word. Thomas met Whitmore's eyes. I married her, promised protection. I don't break promises anymore. Anymore? What's that mean? Means I broke enough promises at Gila Bend, followed enough orders that turned me into something I hated. I'm done with that. Whitmore's face hardened. You'll lose everything. I already lost everything. Lucy's gone, my wife left, father's dead, this ranch is just wood and dirt. Thomas's voice was steel. But Tayan is a person who deserves to live. I've broken too many promises already. I won't break this one. You'd die for an Apache who isn't even your real wife. Seems I would. Whitmore mounted his horse, looked down at Thomas with something that might have been respect or might have been pity. You have 48 hours. Evacuate any civilians, women, children, anyone who doesn't want to be here when I return. He gathered his reins. Because I'm coming back, with 50 men, with a federal warrant, and I will take her, by force, if necessary. Then I'll see you in 48 hours, Colonel. Whitmore rode away. Thomas watched until he disappeared, then turned to find Tayan standing in the doorway. She'd heard everything. You could have taken the deal. Could have. Why didn't you? Thomas pulled out the wooden horse, held it up to the light. Because Lucy believed in protecting people, the weak, the helpless, the ones no one else would stand up for. He looked at Tayan. She'd hate me if I traded your life for money. I'm not weak, not helpless. I know, but you still deserve protecting. He pocketed the horse. Everyone does. Tayan descended the steps. stood close enough that he could see the pulse in her throat, the way her hands shook slightly before she steadied them. "I'm leaving, tonight, riding for Mexico. He'll hunt you, kill you. Then at least the ranch survives. Miguel stays safe. Kiona stays safe. All these people who depend on you, they don't suffer. And I live with knowing I let you go to your death, no." "Thomas." It was the first time she'd used his name. Not Merrick, not husband. Thomas. "You can't save me. Some things are beyond saving. Let me try." Why does it matter so much? He wanted to say, because you're my wife, because I made a promise, because it's the right thing to do, but those were surface truths. Underneath was something deeper. Because when I look at you, I don't see just an Apache woman. I see someone fighting to survive in a world that wants to break her. I see courage, strength, someone who refuses to apologize for existing. He paused. I see what Lucy might have become, if she'd lived, if the world hadn't taken her. Tyen's eyes glistened. "You can't replace her with me." "I'm not trying to. I'm just trying to save one person, after failing to save the one who mattered most." They stood in the dying light, two people who'd started as strangers, who'd been thrown together by necessity, who were becoming something neither had planned. "If we do this," Tyen said quietly, "if we stand against Whitmore, people will die. Your people. Maybe Miguel, maybe Sean. Blood will be on our hands." "I know. Can you live with that? Can you?" She didn't answer right away, just looked out at the valley, at the mountains where her people lived, at the ranch that had become something like home. "Tell me about Lucy, really tell me. Not just that she died. Who was she?" They sat on the porch steps, the same steps where Lucy used to sit and watch clouds. Thomas talked, let the memories flow. She was light, just pure light, always laughing, even when things were hard. His voice softened. Loved horses, wanted to be a vaquero when she grew up, used to practice roping fence posts. "Did she know you were cavalry? What you'd done?" "No, she was too young. I never told her." He paused. "But I think she sensed the shadows, used to crawl into my lap when the nightmares came, would put her small hand on my face and say, 'Papa, the bad dreams can't hurt you. I'm here.'" Tyen was quiet. Then, when she got sick, what did she say? Thomas felt his throat close. "She held my hand, weak as paper, and she said, 'Don't be sad, Papa. I'll wait for you in the stars.'" He broke. "I told her I loved her, that she was the best thing I'd ever done, and then she was gone." Tyen took his hand, the first truly intimate touch between them. Her fingers laced through his. She was lucky to have a father who loved that much. "I failed her." "No, you loved her. That's never failure." She squeezed his hand. "And she's right. The bad dreams can't hurt you, not when you face them." Thomas looked at their joined hands. "I'm afraid of losing someone else. I'm afraid of being the reason you lose everything." "Then we're both afraid. But we don't have to be afraid alone." She turned to him. Her face was close, eyes searching his, looking for something. Truth, maybe, or courage, or just permission. He didn't know who moved first. Maybe both of them. Maybe neither. But suddenly they were kissing. It wasn't gentle, wasn't romantic, was desperate and necessary and real. They broke apart, breathing hard. "That was stupid," Tyen finished. "Complicated, dangerous, all of those. Do you regret it?" Thomas touched her face, traced the line of her jaw. "No, do you? Ask me tomorrow, after we're still alive." They went inside, found Miguel and Kiona in the kitchen. Sean was there too. Imala had arrived with news. Kohana was coming, with 8 warriors, Apache support for the coming fight. "He doesn't have to do this," Thomas said. "This isn't Apache business." Imala's eyes were fierce. "You married Tyen. That makes you family. Family protects family. Even white family. Even family that doesn't know it's family yet." That night they prepared, checked ammunition, reinforced doors and windows, made plans for evacuation routes if things went wrong. the ranch transformed into a fortress. Near midnight, Kohana arrived. The war leader dismounted with 7 warriors behind him. His face was grim. Thomas met him in the yard. "You came. HYN is blood. That makes this our fight." Kohana paused. "But there's something I must tell you first, before we fight together." "What?" "I killed your brother. Fort Verde, 1876. Ambush in the canyon." The words hit like bullets. Thomas went still. "My brother Jonathan, I didn't know his name, just that he was cavalry. Young, maybe 20. Kohana's voice was steady. "I cut his throat, watched him die, took his rifle as trophy." Thomas felt rage rise, hot and immediate. His hand went to his gun. Kohana didn't flinch. "If you need to kill me, I understand, but do it after Whitmore is dealt with. HYN needs every warrior." They stood there, 2 men bound by violence, by the endless cycle of revenge that defined the territory. Jonathan had been Thomas's only brother, 3 years younger, died in the same war that had broken Thomas. "Why tell me this now?" "Because if we die tomorrow, you deserve to know who you died beside." Kohana met his eyes. "We're both killers, Thomas Merrick, both people with blood on our hands. The question is whether we let that blood drown us or wash us clean." Thomas thought of Gila Bend, of 17 people dead, of HYN killing Davis, of Sister Maria shot while trying to protect, of the endless circle of violence that never seemed to end. "Clean," he said finally. "Let it wash us clean." Kohana nodded, extended his hand. Thomas took it. "Your brother fought well, died with honor. I've told myself that for years." "Did he?" "No. He died afraid, begging for life." Kohana's voice was harsh, "but I thought the lie might help. Truth helps more." They went inside, made final plans. 17 fighters total against Whitmore's 50. Bad odds, but not impossible. Sean spoke up. "If we're confessing sins, I should mention I'm not exactly sober material." "We know," Miguel said dryly, "and I'm a coward. Ran from more fights than I've stood for." "You're standing now," Thomas said. "That's what matters." Kiona held Miguel's hand. "If we survive this, I want to marry you. Proper ceremony. Both cultures." Miguel smiled through his pain. "If we survive this, I'll marry you anywhere you want, even in front of my father." Even then, HYN stood. "We all know people might die tomorrow. We should say now what needs saying." She looked at Thomas. "I can't forgive you for Gila Bend. That's not mine to give. The dead can't forgive. But I can forgive you for being human, for making terrible choices when terrible choices were all you had." Thomas felt something break inside. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet. Just don't die tomorrow. I'm tired of losing people." They slept in shifts. Thomas took first watch, stood on the porch with his rifle, watched the stars Lucy had promised to wait among. HYN joined him near dawn. "Can't sleep. Keep thinking about Sister Maria, about what she said before Davis shot her." "What did she say?" "That God forgives everyone, even those who don't deserve it." HYN's voice cracked. "I asked how she knew. She said because God loves us anyway. Loves us through our worst selves." "Do you believe that?" "I want to, but I've seen too much cruelty, too much suffering." She looked at him. "Do you?" "I believe people can be better than they've been, that we can choose differently." He touched the wooden horse. "Lucy believed in second chances. That's enough for me." Dawn broke red and violent. Like the sky was bleeding. The watchers from Whitmore's camp had disappeared during the night, gone to report back, to prepare. By noon they saw the dust cloud, 50 riders, maybe more, coming fast. Everyone took positions. Miguel on the roof despite his ribs, Sean at the barn window, Vaquero scattered through defensive points, Kohana and his warriors forming a second line. HYN and Kiona stayed in the house, both armed, both ready. Thomas stood alone in the yard, waiting. The cavalry column arrived, Whitmore at its head. Behind him rode men Thomas recognized, good soldiers, decent men who believed they were serving justice. It made what came next harder. Whitmore called out, "Thomas Merrick, you're harboring a fugitive wanted for murder. Surrender her immediately or face federal charges for obstruction. She's my wife. You want her? You go through me." "Then I will." Whitmore raised his hand. The line of cavalry tensed. Thomas saw them check their weapons, saw the fear and determination on young faces. Boys, most of them, barely older than Jonathan had been. "Last chance, Merrick, stand down." "No." Whitmore's hand dropped. "Charge." What followed was chaos. Not the clean heroism of stories, not the glory of battlefield paintings, just confusion and terror and the desperate struggle to stay alive. The cavalry hit the ranch like a wave. Thomas fired, saw a soldier fall, felt sick even as he levered another round. Sean's rifle cracked from the barn, Miguel's from the roof. The vaqueros poured fire into the charging line. Kohana's warriors met them with carbines and arrows, fighting with the skill of men who'd been doing this their whole lives. 3 soldiers fell in the first 30 seconds, but there were so many, they kept coming, overwhelming through numbers. A soldier made it to the porch. Thomas met him with his rifle butt. They grappled. Fell. The soldier was young, 18 maybe, terrified. "Please," the boy gasped. "I don't want to die." Thomas shoved him away. "Then leave. Run. I won't shoot." The boy scrambled back, disappeared into the smoke and dust. But others weren't so lucky. Juan, one of the vaqueros, took a bullet, fell from his position. Felipe dragged him to cover, but the wound was bad. Gut shot. Dying slow. Sean's leg wound reopened, blood soaking through his pants, but he kept firing, kept fighting, muttering prayers in Gaelic between shots. The battle raged for 20 minutes that felt like hours. Thomas lost track of everything except the next threat, the next target, the desperate need to keep them away from the house where HYN hid. Then he saw Kohana. The war leader was surrounded, 3 soldiers pressing in. Kohana fought like a demon, knife in one hand, pistol in the other, but they were overwhelming him. A soldier behind Kohana raised his rifle, aimed at the Apache's back. Thomas ran, tackled the soldier. They rolled. The rifle discharged, bullet going wide. Kohana spun, saw Thomas on the ground, saw another soldier aiming at Thomas. Time slowed. Thomas saw it happening, knew he couldn't move fast enough. The soldier's finger tightening on the trigger, the end coming fast. Kohana threw himself between them. The bullet meant for Thomas took him in the chest, high near the heart. The war leader fell, blood spreading dark across his shirt. "No!" Thomas scrambled to him, caught him as he collapsed. Kohana looked up, smiled through pain. "Now we're even, for your brother. Don't talk. Save your strength." No strength left. Kohana coughed, red on his lips. "You protect her. You protect my sister. You protect all of them." "I will." "Promise. On your daughter's memory." "I promise." Kohana's hand gripped Thomas's shirt. "Tell Imala I died well. Tell her I died making things right." "You can tell her yourself." But Kohana's eyes were already distant, looking at something Thomas couldn't see. The ancestors' call. "I go to them now." His voice dropped to whisper, "Protect her, white man, or I'll haunt you." Then he was gone, hand going slack, eyes fixed on nothing. Thomas held him. This man who'd killed his brother, who'd just died saving his life, who'd become something like a friend in the space of a single night. Rage filled him, not at Kohana and at Whitmore, at this whole stupid war, at the endless cycle of violence that took good people and ground them to dust. He stood, picked up Kohana's rifle, turned toward where Whitmore fought. The colonel saw him coming, saw the death in Thomas's eyes, raised his own weapon. They fired simultaneously. Thomas felt the bullet graze his shoulder. Burning pain, but his shot was true. Took Whitmore in the leg. The colonel fell from his horse. Thomas strode forward. Soldiers scattered. They'd seen enough. Seen their commander fall. Seen Apache and white fighting together. Seen blood that accomplished nothing. Thomas stood over Whitmore, aimed the rifle at his head. "Do it!" Whitmore gasped. "Finish it!" Thomas's finger tightened on the trigger. Would be so easy. One shot. End this forever. But he heard Lucy's voice. "Papa, the bad dreams can't hurt you. I'm here." He lowered the rifle. "No, enough blood, enough dying." He turned to the remaining soldiers. "It's over. Your colonel's down. You've done your duty. Now leave before more people die for nothing." The soldiers looked at each other, at their wounded, and at Whitmore bleeding in the dirt, at the Apache and white defenders standing together. One by one they lowered their weapons. The ranking sergeant dismounted, approached cautiously. "Sir, we need to get the colonel medical attention." "Take him. Take your wounded. Leave." "What about the fugitive?" "What fugitive? I don't see anyone here but my wife and my workers." The sergeant looked at the house, at HYN now standing in the doorway, at the devastation around them, at Kohana's body. "Understood, sir." They gathered their wounded, lifted Whitmore onto a horse. The colonel was conscious, but fading. "This isn't over," he managed. "Yes, it is," Thomas said. "It's been over. You just couldn't see it." The cavalry rode away, left behind the dead, the broken, the survivors who'd have to figure out how to live with what they'd done. Thomas went to Kohana, lifted the war leader's body, carried him inside, laid him on the table where they'd shared meals, where they'd made plans, where HYN now stood weeping. She touched Kohana's face. "Fool, brave, stupid fool." Imala entered, saw her husband, made a sound that wasn't quite human, grief beyond words. She threw herself on his body, wept. The warriors stood silent, honoring their leader with presence and respect. Thomas felt HYN's hand find his. "Hold tight." "He died for you," she whispered. "I know. That's a debt we can never repay. No, we can only honor it, live the life he bought us." Outside, Miguel was being carried in, Sean limping under his own power, the vaqueros tending their wounded. Juan was dying. Everyone knew it, but they made him comfortable, held his hand, spoke softly in Spanish about his home, his family, the good man he'd been. He died at sunset, the second loss of the day, but not the last. 2 more warriors had fallen, young men Thomas hadn't learned the names of. They'd fought for HYN, for family, for the idea that people could stand together across the lines that usually divided them. They burned Kohana that night. Apache tradition. Imala sang songs Thomas didn't understand but felt in his bones, grief that transcended language. HYN stood beside him. He was the best of us, fierce, loyal, would die for his people. He did die for his people. We're his people now. She looked at him. "Are we? We fought together, bled together. That makes us something." Thomas squeezed her hand. "Maybe not quite family, but something close." The fires burned through the night, sent smoke and souls skyward. In the darkness, Thomas and HYN sat on the porch, exhausted, wounded, alive. "What happens now?" she asked. "I don't know. Whitmore's wounded but not dead. He'll report back. There'll be consequences. For you or for me? Both. Maybe neither." He touched his shoulder where the bullet had grazed. "But we're alive. That's something." Is it enough? Thomas thought about Lucy, about Kohana, about all the people who'd died so they could sit here, who'd believed their lives were worth protecting. It has to be. HYN leaned her head on his shoulder. First time she'd done that. First time she'd let herself be vulnerable. "I'm tired, Thomas, so tired of fighting, of running, of watching people die." "I know. When does it end?" "Maybe it doesn't. Maybe we just find moments between the fighting, moments like this." She was quiet. Then, "Thank you for not taking Whitmore's deal, for choosing me over everything else." "I'd choose you again, every time, even knowing what it cost, even then." They sat in silence, 2 people who'd started as strangers, who'd been forced together by circumstance, who'd become something neither could name but both needed. Morning would bring new challenges, new decisions, new consequences for the choices they'd made, but for now, for tonight, they had each other, had survived another day, had honored the dead by staying alive. And in a world as hard as theirs, that was all anyone could ask: to live, to fight, to choose love over hate, even when it cost everything, especially then. The federal judge arrived 2 weeks after the battle. Thomas had expected soldiers, expected arrest, expected the full weight of government authority coming down on his head. Instead came Judge Caroline Harrison, 60 years old, gray hair pulled severe, eyes that missed nothing. She was one of the first female judges in the territory, had a reputation for fairness that bordered on ruthless. She set up court in the Tucson courthouse, sent word that Thomas Merrick and HYN were to appear, along with any witnesses to the events surrounding Lieutenant Marcus Davis's death. The courtroom was packed. Settlers who'd lost family to Apache raids, Apache who'd lost family to cavalry, soldiers loyal to Whitmore, and a handful of people who just wanted to see justice done, whatever that meant. Thomas sat with HYN at the defendant's table, Miguel beside them. Sean had come despite his healing leg. Imala and the surviving Apache warriors filled one side of the gallery. On the other side sat Whitmore, legs still bandaged, face gaunt with pain and rage. Jesse sat beside him, arm in a sling, both brothers glaring hatred across the room. Judge Harrison entered. Everyone stood. "Be seated." She arranged her papers, looked over the courtroom with the expression of someone who'd seen every kind of human ugliness and wasn't impressed by any of it. "We're here to determine the facts surrounding the death of Lieutenant Marcus Davis and the subsequent events at the Merrick Ranch." She fixed HYN with a sharp gaze. "The accused will stand." HYN rose, didn't flinch under that scrutiny. "You're charged with murder. How do you plead?" "Not guilty, Your Honor." A murmur ran through the crowd. Harrison's gavel cracked down. "Silence, or I'll clear this room." The prosecutor stood, a thin man named Wallace. He laid out the Army's case. Davis had gone to the Santa Fe mission on official business, had been killed by HYN in cold blood, had died serving his country. It was a clean narrative, simple, the kind that played well to prejudices. Then Thomas's lawyer stood, a woman named Catherine Moore, sharp as glass and twice as cutting. "Your Honor, I'd like to call Thomas Merrick to testify." Thomas took the stand, swore his oath on a Bible that had belonged to his mother. Moore asked, "Mr. Merrick, you were cavalry. You served under Captain Reynolds. Did you know Lieutenant Davis?" "No, he came after my time." "But you knew men like him." "Objection," Wallace said. "I'm just speculation." "I'll allow it," Harrison said. "Answer the question." Thomas chose his words carefully. "I knew officers who believed Apache were less than human, who thought forced relocation and cultural destruction were acceptable policies." "And did you encounter violence against Native women during your service?" "Yes." "Can you describe one incident?" Thomas took a breath. "At Fort Bowie, 1878. I witnessed an officer attempt to force himself on an Apache woman. When she resisted, he beat her. When I reported it, I was told to mind my own business." "What happened to the officer?" "Nothing. He was transferred. Promoted later, I heard." Moore nodded. "Thank you. No further questions." Wallace cross-examined, tried to paint Thomas as biased, as someone with reason to lie, but Thomas held firm. Next came Miguel. He testified about finding HYN, about the wanted poster, about Whitmore's threats. Then Sean. The Irishman's testimony was powerful in its simplicity. "I've done terrible things, killed Apache women and children at Gila Bend, followed orders that made me a monster," his voice cracked. "But I've also seen redemption, seen people choose to be better. HYN killed a man who was murdering an innocent nun. That's not murder, that's defense." Wallace tried to discredit him, called him a drunk, a Catholic, an unreliable witness. Sean just smiled. I'm all those things, but I'm also a man who knows murder when he sees it, and this isn't it." The first surprise witness came next, Padre Martinez from Santa Fe. He testified about Sister Maria, about the mission, about what he'd found when he arrived after Davis's death. Sister Maria was shot through the heart, point blank. There was powder burn on her habit. His voice shook. I found her rosary clutched in Tyen's hands. The girl was covered in blood, not her own, Sister Maria's and Davis's both. What did she tell you? Moore asked. That Davis had demanded she come with him, that Sister Maria had said no, that he shot the sister without hesitation, that Tyen defended herself with the only weapon available. Did you believe her? I blessed Sister Maria's body, gave her last rites, though she was already gone. The padre met the judge's eyes. Yes, I believed her. I still do. Wallace couldn't shake him. The padre was unimpeachable, a man of God with no reason to lie. Then came the second surprise witness, a land surveyor named Robert Henderson, not related to the murdered Henderson family. Different Henderson entirely. Catherine Moore called him to the stand. Mr. Henderson, what is your profession? Land surveyor, ma'am. Work for whoever pays. And who paid you last spring? Henderson shifted uncomfortably, pulled out a ledger. Consortium called Southwest Mining Associates. They hired me to survey Apache lands near Whispering Spring. Why that specific area? They suspected silver deposits, wanted to know if the land was worth acquiring. Moore approached the bench. Your Honor, I'd like to enter this ledger as evidence. Harrison examined it. Proceed. Mr. Henderson, did this consortium discuss how they plan to acquire Apache land? Objection, Wallace said. Speculation. I'll allow it. Answer the question. Henderson took a breath. They said the land would be available soon, that the Apache problem would be resolved within months. What did they mean by that? I didn't know at the time, but later I heard about the raids, the attacks on settlers, the pressure to relocate tribes. He met the judge's eyes. Then I saw the payment records. What payment records? Henderson produced more documents. These show payments from Southwest Mining to Jesse Whitmore and 5 other men, all dated before the supposed Apache raids began. The courtroom erupted. Whitmore surged to his feet, face purple with rage. Lies, all of it. Harrison's gavel cracked. Sit down, Colonel, or I'll have you removed. Moore continued. Mr. Henderson, are you saying the raids were fabricated? Not all of them. The Henderson family massacre was real. Different tribe, different circumstance. But several other incidents, the ones Jesse Whitmore and his vigilantes claimed to witness, Henderson tapped the ledger. Those happened right after payments were made. Why come forward now? Because good people died. Because I can't live with knowing I helped, even unknowingly. His voice cracked. And because Sister Maria deserved better than being collateral damage in a land grab. Wallace tried to discredit the documents, called them forgeries, but the dates matched. The signatures were verified. The pattern was undeniable. Some of the anti-Apache violence had been manufactured, orchestrated by men who wanted the land, not justice. Judge Harrison studied the evidence for a long moment, then looked at Whitmore with open disgust. Colonel, it appears your crusade was built partially on lies, and you may have been complicit. I knew nothing about mining interests, Whitmore shouted. Perhaps, but your brother did, and you led the charge without questioning the convenient timing of these raids. Harrison turned back to Tyen. Continue with your witness, Ms. Moore. Finally, Tyen took the stand. He testified about Sister Maria, about the mission, about what he'd found when he arrived after Davis's death. Sister Maria was shot through the heart, point blank. There was powder burn on her habit. His voice shook. I found her rosary clutched in Tyen's hands. The girl was covered in blood, not her own, Sister Maria's and Davis's both. What did she tell you? Moore asked. That Davis had demanded she come with him. That Sister Maria had said no. That he shot the sister without hesitation. That Tyen defended herself with the only weapon available. Did you believe her? I blessed Sister Maria's body, gave her last rites though she was already gone. The padre met the judge's eyes. Yes, I believed her. I still do. Wallace couldn't shake him. The padre was unimpeachable, a man of God with no reason to lie. Finally, Tyen took the stand. She told her story, plain and simple, no embellishment, no plea for sympathy. Lieutenant Davis came to take me to the reservation. I refused. Sister Maria stood between us. He shot her. I grabbed scissors from the sewing table. When he turned to me, I stabbed him in the throat. Did you intend to kill him? Moore asked. Yes, A gasp from the gallery. Why, because he'd just murdered someone I loved, because he was reaching for me, because I knew what men like him did to Apache women. Tyen's voice was steady. I chose to live, and if that makes me a murderer, then I'm a murderer. Wallace leapt up. Your Honor, she just confessed. She confessed to self-defense, Moore countered. There's a difference. Harrison called a recess. They waited 2 hours while she reviewed testimony, considered evidence, made her decision. When court reconvened, her face revealed nothing. I've heard the testimony, reviewed the evidence. The facts are these: Lieutenant Marcus Davis shot and killed Sister Maria Garcia without provocation. Tyen, in fear for her life and in reaction to witnessing murder, defended herself with lethal force. Harrison looked at Tyen. Under territorial law that constitutes justified homicide, not murder, the charges are dismissed. The courtroom erupted. Whitmore surged to his feet. This is outrageous. She killed a United States officer, an officer who committed murder himself, Harrison snapped. Sit down, Colonel, or I'll hold you in contempt. Whitmore didn't sit. That woman is Apache, a savage. She doesn't deserve the protection of our courts. Harrison's eyes went cold. Everyone deserves the protection of the courts. That's what makes us civilized. Not the color of our skin or the language we speak, but our commitment to justice. She pointed her gavel at him. You're done here, Colonel. Bailiff, escort him out. As soldiers led Whitmore away, he screamed threats, promises of revenge, but his power was broken. Everyone could see it. Harrison turned back to Tyen. You're free to go, and may I say you showed remarkable courage both in defending yourself and in facing this court. Thank you, Your Honor. They walked out together. Thomas, Tyen, Miguel shone the Apache warriors into sunlight that felt like absolution. But the victory was incomplete. The consequences still waited. The bank foreclosed a month later. Thomas had known it was coming. The battle had damaged the ranch beyond his ability to repair. Too much debt. Too little income. The water rights from Whispering Spring couldn't save what was already lost. He watched men load his possessions onto wagons, everything his father had built, everything Lucy had known as home, going to auction, to strangers who'd never know what these walls had held. Tyen found him in the empty house. I'm sorry. Don't be, was my choice. I'd make it again. What will you do now? I don't know. Find work somewhere. Start over. She took his hand. Dasan sent a message. He offers you a place with the tribe. Thomas looked at her. Me, a white man living with Apache. You married into the family, bled for the family. That makes you family. She smiled, small and sad. Besides, Kohana died saving you. His sacrifice demands honor. The best way to honor him is to accept what he bought with his life. I can't just take charity. Then don't. Dasan needs someone who understands both worlds, someone who can negotiate with white settlers, broker trade agreements, build bridges. A partnership, if you want to call it that. Thomas thought about it, about starting fresh, about living among the people he'd once fought against, about whether redemption was even possible. What about you? He asked. What do you want? Tyen looked around the empty house, at the space where Lucy's room had been, where they'd shared meals, where they'd become something more than strangers bound by necessity. I want to stop running, stop hiding, stop being only what others make me. She met his eyes. I want to be Tyen, your wife, not in name only, in truth. Thomas's heart hammered. Are you sure? I've never been more sure of anything. He kissed her. Different from the desperate kiss before the battle. This was slow, deliberate, a promise being made and accepted. When they broke apart, both were crying. We'll need to start over completely, Thomas said. I have nothing left. We have each other. That's not nothing. Miguel and Kiona were married 3 days before they left the ranch. Proper ceremony. Catholic priest for her, Apache traditions for him. A blending of worlds. They stayed behind. Miguel bought a small piece of land from the bank. would build a trading post on the edge of Apache territory, a place where both cultures could meet, buy, sell, talk. Kiona was pregnant. Didn't show yet, but knew. She glowed with the secret of it. "You'll come visit," she asked HYN. "Every month, I promise. And you'll bring your babies when they come, if they come." "They will. I saw it in a dream. You'll have a daughter, strong, fierce, like her mother." HYN had laughed, but later alone with Thomas she'd wondered. Sean surprised everyone by staying too. Imala had asked him, not for marriage, not yet, but for partnership. She needed someone to help run the land Kohana had left her, needed someone who understood farming and ranching. "You'd trust me," Sean had asked. "After what I did, after Gila Bend, you've earned trust. Through honesty, through fighting beside us, through being the man you are now, not the man you were." They became partners, business at first. But everyone saw how Sean looked at her, how she smiled when he entered a room, how grief was slowly becoming something else. The day they left the ranch, Thomas looked back one last time, at the house where his daughter had died, where he'd buried his old life, where he'd found a new one he never expected. "Regrets?" HYN asked. "Hundreds, but this isn't one of them." They rode to Apache land, were welcomed with ceremony. Dasan embraced Thomas like a son. "You saved my daughter, gave up everything to protect her. That's the kind of man we need." Thomas built a small cabin near Whispering Spring, the same spring that had started everything, the water that had bound him to this path. He taught Apache children to read and write, English and Spanish both, gave them tools to navigate the white world without losing their identity. HYN taught white settlers about Apache culture, about the land, about how to live in harmony instead of conquest. It was slow work, hard work. Many people on both sides resisted, but gradually bridges formed, understanding grew. 6 months after the trial, HYN told him. They were sitting by the spring, evening light turning the water gold. She took his hand, placed it on her belly. "I'm with child." Thomas froze, joy and terror in equal measure. "Are you sure?" "Yes." "I don't know if I can. If Lucy—" "This child is not Lucy. But you can love both." She squeezed his hand. "You can honor Lucy by being a good father to this one, by not letting fear steal joy." He thought about that, about the wooden horse he still carried, about Lucy's last words, about all the ghosts he'd collected. "What if I fail again?" "Then you fail, but you'll fail trying. That's all anyone can do." They decided to name the baby Kohana if it was a boy, Elena if it was a girl. It was a girl, born in spring when the desert bloomed, dark hair, dark eyes, lungs that announced her presence to the entire valley. Thomas held her with shaking hands, this tiny person who depended on him, who trusted him to keep her safe. "Hello, Elena." She gripped his finger, strong for something so small. HYN watched from the bed, exhausted but smiling. "What do you think?" "I think I'm terrified." "Good. Means you care." Miguel and Kiona came to visit, brought their son, a fat baby named Diego who laughed at everything. Sean and Imala came too. They'd married quietly. A small ceremony, both still grieving Kohana, but learning to live again. Dasan came, held his granddaughter with tears in his eyes. "She has your mother's spirit, strong, unbreakable." They all gathered by the spring, Apache and white, Mexican and Irish, people who shouldn't fit together but somehow did. Miguel raised his cup. "To family, however it finds us." "To family," they echoed. Thomas looked around at the faces, at the children who represented the future, at the adults who'd fought to make that future possible. He thought about Gila Bend, about the people he'd failed, about the ghosts that still followed. But he also thought about the people he'd saved, about HYN alive and free, about Elena sleeping in her mother's arms, about the community they'd built from grief and necessity and unexpected love. "What are you thinking?" HYN asked. That maybe redemption isn't about erasing the past. Maybe it's about choosing better in the present. And have you chosen better? He looked at his daughter, at his wife, at the life they'd built from ashes. I'm trying. That's all anyone can do. Years passed. Elena grew, learned to walk in two worlds, spoke Apache and English, understood both cultures, became the bridge her parents had hoped for. Thomas taught her to carve, made her wooden horses like the one he'd made for Lucy. She loved them, lined them up on her windowsill. "Tell me about my sister," she'd ask, not jealous, just curious. And Thomas would tell her about Lucy's laugh, her dreams, her kindness. Elena listened with serious eyes, then hugged him fierce. "I wish I could have known her." "She would have loved you." The ranch land where they'd fought eventually became a memorial. Miguel maintained it, planted trees for those who died. Kohana, Juan, the warriors and soldiers whose names were slowly being remembered. People came to visit, to remember, to try to understand. Thomas brought Elena there when she was old enough, showed her the house where he'd lost everything and found everything. "This is where your mother and I met. Did you love her right away?" "No, we were strangers, afraid, angry at the world." "When did you love her?" Thomas thought about it, about the gradual thaw, the moments of understanding, the choice to see each other as human. "When she showed me that being broken doesn't mean being worthless, that we can build something good from the pieces." Elena absorbed this. "I'm a piece, aren't I? A piece of you and Mama, a piece of both worlds." "You're not a piece. You're whole. You're yourself." "Even though people will always see me as mixed, as not quite Apache, not quite white, especially then, you're proof that categories are lies, that people are just people, that love doesn't care about blood or culture or the things that divide us." She hugged him. "I love you, Papa. I love you too, little bird." He didn't realize he'd used Lucy's nickname until it was out, but it felt right. Both daughters, both loved, both part of him. On a spring morning when Elena was 7, Thomas and HYN walked to Whispering Spring, same place where everything had started, where water had bound them together. They stood in the shallows, let the cold current flow over their feet. "Do you ever regret it?" HYN asked, "giving up the ranch, the life you had?" Thomas thought about it, really thought. "I regret the people who died, Kohana, Juan, the soldiers who believed they were serving justice. I regret that violence was necessary." He took her hand. "But I don't regret choosing you, choosing this. Even though we lost everything, we didn't lose everything. We lost the ranch, lost the old life. But we gained each other, gained Elena, gained a community that's trying to be better." She leaned against him. "I forgive you, for Gila Bend, for the war, for all of it." He'd waited years to hear those words, had stopped believing they'd ever come. "I thought you couldn't, thought the dead couldn't forgive. They can't, but I can. I choose to." She looked up at him. "Kohana died so we could live. I won't waste that gift on hate, on holding you to crimes you've spent years trying to atone for." Thomas felt tears on his face. "Thank you." "Don't thank me. Just keep being the man Lucy believed you were, the man Elena knows you are. That's enough." They stood in the water, two people who'd been enemies by birth, strangers by circumstance, partners by choice, and finally improbably family by love. The desert stretched around them, vast and indifferent and beautiful. It didn't care about their struggles, their choices, their small human dramas, but they cared. And in caring had created something the desert couldn't erode. Hope. Not the naive hope of easy answers, but the hard-earned hope of people who'd faced darkness and chosen to build light anyway. That evening, Thomas carved another wooden horse for Elena. She already had a dozen, but he liked making them, liked the meditative rhythm of knife on wood. HYN watched him work. "You're good at that. Had practice. Made one for Lucy. Make them for Elena. Guess I'll make them for grandchildren someday." You think we'll have grandchildren? If we're lucky. If the world lets us. The world doesn't let us anything. We take it, build it, fight for it. Thomas smiled. You're right, as usual. I know. Elena came in, saw the new horse, gasped with delight. Oh, for me? Who else? She hugged it to her chest. I'll name her Star, like Aunt Lucy watches from. Thomas's throat closed. That's perfect. After she went to bed, Thomas and HYN sat on their porch. Same ritual they'd had at the ranch, watching the sky fade from blue to black. Tell me a story, HYN said, about the future, about what you hope for. Thomas thought, I hope Elena grows up free, not having to choose between worlds, just living in both. I hope the bridge we're building lasts, that other people use it, cross it, make their own connections. What else? I hope when I die, whenever that is, I die knowing I did more good than harm, that the scales balanced even a little. They already do. You've saved more lives than you took, protected more people than you failed. I don't know if that's true. It is. I'm here because of you. Elena is here because of you. Miguel and Kiona are happy because of you. Sean found peace because of you. She took his hand. You're a good man, Thomas Merrick. Flawed. Haunted. But good. I'm trying to be. That's all Lucy ever asked, all I ask, all Elena will ask. Just try. They sat in comfortable silence. The kind of silence only possible between people who knew each other completely, who'd seen each other's worst and chosen to stay anyway. Stars emerged. Lucy's stars. The ones she'd promised to wait among. Thomas pulled out the original wooden horse, the one he'd made for her. Weathered now, worn from years of carrying. Think she'd be proud of me. I know she would. How can you know? Because I'm proud of you, and I'm much harder to impress than a 7-year-old girl. Thomas laughed. Real laughter. The kind he'd forgotten how to make until HYN taught him again. I love you, he said. Not the first time, but still precious. Still new. I love you too, even though you're impossible and stubborn and refuse to ask for help. I learned from the best. She swatted him. He caught her hand, pulled her close. They sat together under stars that didn't judge, under a sky that offered no answers but infinite possibility. The story could end here with the happy couple. The perfect sunset, the promise of forever. But life wasn't that simple. Their struggles didn't end. Prejudice still existed. Fear still divided people. The government still pushed Apache onto smaller lands, still tried to erase cultures they didn't understand. But Thomas and HYN fought it, every day, in small ways, teaching, translating, building connections, showing by example that people could choose differently. They didn't change the world, but they changed their corner of it, made it a little better, a little kinder, a little more willing to see humanity in unexpected places. And sometimes that was enough. The drought came again, years later. Rivers ran low, springs failed, people struggled. But Whispering Spring kept flowing, fed by aquifers deep enough that surface conditions couldn't touch them. Thomas and HYN opened it to everyone. Apache and white, Mexican and Irish. Anyone who needed water. Some people called them fools, said they were giving away their only advantage. But they'd learned that water wasn't meant to be hoarded, was meant to be shared. That survival depended on cooperation, not competition. The spring became a gathering place. People who came for water stayed to talk, to trade, to learn each other's names, to see each other as human instead of enemy. It wasn't perfect. Fights still broke out. Prejudices still surfaced, but more often than not, people chose understanding over violence, chose to remember the water they shared instead of the differences that divided them. And in that remembering, something new took root. A community built not on blood or culture, but on choice, on the radical idea that people could belong to each other by deciding to belong. Thomas lived to see Elena marry a good man named Samuel, half Mexican, half white, working as a teacher like Thomas had. They had children. Thomas's grandchildren, 4 of them, each a unique blend of cultures and possibilities. He lived to see Miguel and Kiona's trading post become a real town with a school and a church and a mix of people that would have been impossible a generation before. He lived to see Sean and Imala old and happy, still mourning Kohana, but no longer defined by that loss. He lived to see Whitmore die, alone and bitter, his obsession with revenge having consumed everything else. Thomas went to the funeral, not out of spite, but out of a desire to remember that even enemies were human. Even the people who tried to destroy you deserve the dignity of being mourned. And when Thomas's own time came, he faced it without fear. He was 73, old for the territory, his body worn from years of hard living, but his spirit lighter than it had been in decades. HYN sat beside his bed, still beautiful, silver in her hair now, lines around her eyes, but the fierceness remained. "I'm not afraid," he told her. "I know. Lucy's waiting. I can feel it. Then go to her. Tell her about Elena, about the grandchildren, about the life you built. Will you be all right? I'll grieve, but I'll live. You taught me how." He squeezed her hand. "I loved you, from that first kiss, maybe before. I just didn't know it yet. I know, I loved you too, even when I was supposed to hate you." Elena came in, brought the grandchildren. They gathered around his bed, 4 generations of love and struggle and impossible hope. Thomas looked at them, at the future he'd helped create, at the proof that redemption was possible, that people could choose better, could build instead of destroy. "Take care of each other," he whispered. "Remember your family, not by blood alone, but by choice, by the decision to see each other's humanity." They promised. He believed them. As he closed his eyes for the last time, he thought he saw Lucy, standing in sunlight, holding a wooden horse, smiling. "Hello, Papa. I've been waiting. I'm sorry it took so long." "You had work to do. You did it well." "Did I? Look behind you." He turned, saw HYN, Elena, the grandchildren, Miguel and Kiona, Sean and Imala. All the people whose lives he'd touched, who'd touched his. "You built this, built family from strangers, built hope from grief, built love from necessity." Lucy took his hand. "I'm proud of you, Papa, so proud." "Thank you, little bird." Ready to go. He looked back one more time, at HYN crying but smiling, at Elena holding her children, at the life that would continue without him but because of him. "Yes, I'm ready." And Thomas Merrick, who'd been a soldier and a scout and a rancher and a husband and a father and a bridge between worlds, took his daughter's hand and walked into whatever came next, knowing he'd done enough, been enough, chosen well enough, that in the end he'd become the man Lucy believed him to be, and that was the only redemption that mattered. But the story doesn't end with Thomas. HYN lived another 12 years. She became the bridge she'd always been meant to be, teaching, translating, showing by example that 2 worlds could exist in one person without contradiction. She watched Elena become a mother, held her great-grandchildren, told them stories of their grandfather, of Sister Maria, of Kohana, of all the people who died so they could live free. When her time came, she was 85, surrounded by family, Apache and white, Mexican and Irish, the community she'd helped build. Elena held her hand. "Are you afraid, Mama?" "No, your father's waiting. I can feel him." "Tell him we're okay. Tell him the bridge still stands." "I will." As HYN closed her eyes for the last time she saw them, Thomas, Lucy, Sister Maria, Kohana, all the ghosts she'd carried no longer ghosts but whole and smiling. "You did well," Thomas said, taking her hand. "We did well," she corrected. "Together." And HYN, who'd been a killer and a survivor and a wife and a mother and a bridge between worlds, walked into peace knowing her work was complete. The spring still flows. Elena's children protect it, share it. Honor the covenant forged in blood and water and forgiveness. Some stories end with death. This one ends with life continuing, with children who carry both worlds in their blood and see no contradiction, with a community that chooses connection over division. The dust has settled, but the covenant remains. The end.